D1, welcome to lesson 12 of our personal narrative writing. I do want to preface and let you guys know that this is going to be a 2-day job. So that means I do not expect you to get it all done today. It's going to take you 2 days to complete this job. So take those 2 days to really make sure you get your middle of your writing as great as you can. And we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to model for you as well what it will look like. So first things first, we need to look at lesson 4, because lesson 4, as you remember in our last video, is going to be our guide to helping us organize our writing. And so when we look at the what happened section, if you remember from yesterday's video, Miss Walsh included number 1 in her beginning paragraph. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check that off so I know that I already wrote about that. Next, I'm going to look at sections 2, 3, and 4, because those are going to help guide me as I write the middle portion of my personal narrative. And so I want your personal narratives, your middle of your personal narrative is going to be 2 to 3 paragraphs. That is why it is a 2-day job. It needs to be 2 to 3 paragraphs. So that means you're going to write 10 to 15 sentences for the middle portion of your personal narrative. So if Miss Walsh goes ahead and looks at her what happened section, I can see that number 2, got to bank and got in line, is really similar to number 3, waited in line and looked at the cool things in the queue. These are really similar and I could easily combine those. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to leave a little mark for my brain so I can remember. So I'm going to take the 2 and put a plus sign so I know that I'm going to combine them. So this is going to be one paragraph where I talk about how I got inside and I got in line. And then I'm going to talk about how I waited in line and looked at all the cool things that they had in the queue. And then my other paragraph is going to be about how I went on the ride and I helped Harry escape. So I'm going to end up writing 2 paragraphs in total. If you know you have more than just 2 paragraphs worth of writing, go ahead and write 3 paragraphs. You guys are so smart and scholarly. I know you guys can take that challenge on. So go ahead, you are going to write those 2 to 3 paragraphs. And again, this is going to be a 2-day job, so I do not expect you to complete it in 1 day. So with this being said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to model for you how to write your middle of your personal narrative. So for this job, you are going to need your personal narrative writing book, a pencil. Miss Walsh is using a pen so you can easily read. You are going to need to look back at lesson 4 to help you with your organization. And you are going to flip to lesson 12. So as you can see, Miss Walsh, this is her rough draft for her beginning. It is going to be a separate page from our middle of the rough draft. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to flip this over. And I want to point out some things. So as we move on to the middle of our story, remember the following. Be mindful of word choice and use sensory details. So again, we really want to make sure that we're using descriptive language. We don't want to use boring words like said, happy, pretty. We want to be really specific and detailed with our writing. And then also use sensory details, so things that we can smell, touch, taste, hear, and see. And so we want to make sure that we're being really specific so our reader feels like they're in the story. So to begin, I'm going to make sure I indent my paragraph. Every paragraph needs to start with an indent, and I'm going to go ahead and start. Again, I want to be kind of dramatic with my retelling because I want my reader to be like super duper interested. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to indent. As I stepped inside the bank, again, I'm letting my reader know where I am. Making sure I include proper punctuation. I was immediately in awe of the grand chandelier that sparkled. In the middle of the bank. And so you can see already right here, I'm using sensory details and descriptive language to let the reader know how I'm feeling. I'm in awe, like shocked, stunned, and I'm seeing this grand chandelier that sparkled in the middle of the bank. So I'm being really specific, making sure that my reader can almost imagine the chandelier in their head. They can visualize it. In line, I watched as goblins, because there's goblins, so you can imagine what this is looking like, worked hard counting shiny gold coins. And again, making sure that I'm using proper punctuation. I'm ending my sentences with a period, and I'm starting them with capitals. And again, I want to make sure that my I is capitalized. If my I is being used as a pronoun, as it is here, make sure it's capitalized. I do not want to see lowercase i's. So I'm talking about the gold coins, and now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add more sensory detail so my reader can imagine the setting. The bitter scent. Bitter is like the opposite of sweet. The bitter scent of the coins filled the room. The very next section of the cue included the vaults of all the wizards and witches. Period. And so again, I'm using here a transition, the very next section of the cue, so my reader knows that I moved on and I'm transitioning on time. So I'm not in the same exact moment, I'm in now a different part of time. So I'm in a new part of the cue. And so I'm going to go ahead and now keep going, making sure that my reader can imagine what I'm experiencing. The massive doors protecting, make sure, their treasures were lined in the shiniest gold I have ever seen. I could sense we were approaching the ride as my family and I were instructed. Go ahead and flip over to the next page. Were instructed to get into an elevator. This was no ordinary elevator. Again, I'm using really descriptive language. Ordinary, so I'm saying it's no ordinary elevator, so you can know that there's something already special about this elevator. As it carried almost 30 people. That is a lot. And because I'm writing a pretty big number, I can go ahead and I can just write it in standard form. I do not need to write it in word form. It is a bigger number, so I can write it in standard form, just so you guys know. If it's a big number in your story, you can write it in standard form. It carried almost 30 people and shook violently as we traveled downwards. So again, I'm making sure that I'm using my senses to help the reader imagine what I'm experiencing. So shook violently, you know it's going woo crazy as we are in the elevator. On the way down, again, I'm using a transition. I could see how we were leaving the top level of the bank to the rocky and cold tunnel below. Period. Alright, so I went ahead and as I said in my brainstorm, I went ahead and I combined both ideas. I talked about how I got into line and then how I waited in line and looked at all these cool things in the queue. So I went ahead and I addressed these. And now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to check off 2 and 3, knowing I already talked about them. And now for 4, I'm going to talk about how I went on the ride and helped Harry escape. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to come back to you guys, and I'll see you in just a moment with paragraph 2 of my writing. Alrighty, and I am back with my second paragraph of my middle. I went ahead and I just hopped off real quick so I can go ahead and write it. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go over it with you guys. So I started a new paragraph. So what that mean was I started on a new line. I indented so that way my reader knows that this is a new paragraph showing a shift in time. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read for you and explain as I go along why I included certain things. So I said, Butterflies filled my stomach as we approached closer to the ride. And so here was a really great way of Miss Walsh explaining that she was nervous without saying I was nervous, right? So I talked about how I got that butterfly feeling in my stomach to kind of help the reader imagine what I'm feeling. We could hear the faint screams of other readers in the distance. And so here I am using the sense of hearing, talking about how what I'm experiencing as I'm getting ready to go onto the ride. When climbing into our seats, I let out an "oh" because I was shocked to find that my seat was a little wet. And again, I'm now starting to introduce dialogue because I realized in my last paragraph I didn't really use a lot of dialogue, so I want to make sure that I use that because that's part of a personal narrative. Hold on. And as you can see, I had to grab another piece of paper, and that's totally fine. If you need to use your journal to add more, please do, because I want to make sure that it is enough for you guys, and you guys are making your writing the best that you can possibly do so. So hold on tight and enjoy the ride, instructed the ride attendant. And again, so instead of saying said the ride attendant, I added instructed the ride attendant. Finally, we were on the ride. Vivid images of Harry and his friends appeared in front of us, requesting our help as they attempted to escape Gringotts. And so here I am, I'm being dramatic, right? I'm using really descriptive language, requesting our help as they attempted to escape Gringotts. It's really suspenseful and it makes my readers want to read more. "Whoa!" exclaimed my dad as we moved swiftly through the cold and dark tunnels of the bank. So again, I'm using my sense of not only feel with it being cold, but also sight because it's dark. Suddenly, a really dramatic transition word. I love this dramatic transition word. Suddenly, a villainous witch named Bellatrix bust through a wall and demanded to know why we were in her vault. Before she could attack us, Harry and his friends appeared on the back of a great big dragon. The same dragon that was outside the bank. And so here again, I'm being descriptive, talking about what the dragon looked like. It was great and big. And instead of having to go back and describe what it looked like and the marks, I let my reader know, hey, it's the same one that was outside the bank that I talked about earlier. With Harry and the dragon's help, we were able to escape unharmed. And so here I am kind of resolving my problem being that Bellatrix was trying to attack us. I resolved the problem by talking about how Harry and the dragon helped us escape. And so I'm starting to wrap up because in our next lesson, we are going to do our conclusion and we are going to wrap up our whole story. And so again, I want to remind you guys, this is a model. So you are not copying down this writing. What you are doing is now you are applying this to your family vacation, and you are going to write 2 to 3 paragraphs for the middle portion of your writing, and that is going to be the numbers 2 through 4 of your brainstorm, what happened. So in parts 2 through 4, you are going to be writing about them 2 to 3 paragraphs. This is not only Wednesday's job, today's job, but it is also Thursday's job. So you have plenty of time to get 2 to 3 paragraphs done. If you need extra paper, remember you have your journal that Miss Walsh gave you, and you are going to take pictures of these and put them onto Google Slides. And that is going to be it for today's lesson. If you have questions, please message Miss Lopez and I so we can help you out. And that's going to be it. Bye, D1.